Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today, and I'm bringing you another Dragon Ball Super review for episode 11 of Dragon Ball Super, which is called Let's Keep Going Beerus, the Battle of Gods continues. And I actually have to upload this on a Sunday because I'm actually working on a really big theory video that I plan to drop Monday, and just so I wouldn't go for a day without uploading, I decided to just swap it and, obviously work on this video. And I'm not in the best of moods, but doing this video can actually take my mind off of it because my Miami Dolphins just lost a very stupid game to a terrible team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So I'm going to talk about the plot, the action, interesting details, my impressions, my most memorable moment of the episode, and my thoughts on the episode as a whole. So, let's first start off by talking about the plot of this episode. The plot was pretty straightforward, as I predicted in my predictions for this episode. It's essentially going to be an increase in the level of intensity in this episode as what we saw in the previous one. Whereas in the previous episode, we saw, I guess you could say, Goku experimenting with his new Super Saiyan God powers and getting in a few blows here or there. This episode really took the action up a notch, and I felt that the best thing about the plot for this episode is that it really advanced this series in terms of what we know about Beerus, the Super Saiyan God transformation, in terms of how we saw that the Super Saiyan God transformation can heal, and we also have some questions about Vegeta, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in the episode. So, as a whole, I definitely liked how the plot not only just increased the level of action and, advanced the story in terms of fighting, but it also opened our eyes into the different things about the Super Saiyan God transformation and everything along those lines. Now, let's talk about the action. Man, oh man, was this episode filled with action. Unlike episode 8, where essentially Beerus fought against Vegeta for the first few minutes of the episode, unlike episode 2, where we saw Beerus fighting against that red alien, and similar to episode 5 with 10 times better animation, this episode was filled with action from top to bottom. There was almost no minutes of this episode where there was not action. There were some scenes where we saw the Z Fighters talking to each other and, everything along those lines. But in terms of action, this episode was filled with it. But how was the action? Well, I definitely have to say that in terms of the scenes, I felt that the action sequences were very creative. Number one, when Goku was knocked out, or severely injured, as you may say, when Beerus was basically headbutting him up into outer space, I thought that was a very creative scene to showcase action, and I definitely liked that. I also liked a lot of the other things that we saw, like when Beerus is shooting all of those little energy blasts to destroy the Earth, and Goku uses a Kamehameha to essentially wipe out all of those energy blasts that are going to attack the Earth. And, everything along the lines of their fight, their action sequences were pretty interesting. I like how Goku started off, getting the edge, but as Beerus, took the fight a lot more seriously, things started to go more in towards his favor. And I liked how the episode really managed to show you how the Z Fighters were reacting to it. And the fact that a lot of the Z Fighters couldn't even go see their fight, firsthand because of the fact that they ran out of ki, so they couldn't really fly, even though Piccolo didn't go through the transformation, so he should have been flying to see it for himself. And I definitely feel like with all of the creativity that was shown in this episode in terms of the action, the action was fantastic, and it really highlights the fact that Episode 5 of Dragon Ball Super was definitely a rotten egg in the bunch. I could even talk more about the action, but I got other things to review here. Now, moving on to some interesting details, the first thing that I wanted to point out is that in this episode, Beerus shot an energy blast at Goku, and Goku did something pretty weird that I've never really seen in Dragon Ball before, at least to my knowledge, or I'm probably forgetting. But Goku grabbed this huge energy blast that Beerus shot at him, and he kind of squeezed it in a weird way that it looked like he was kind of grabbing a balloon and just basically squeezed it until there was no more. And I've never really seen anything like that where a character just kind of just squeezes in like an energy blast or something like that. That was a very unique scene, and it was also pretty interesting because the sub-translation that I saw, I'm not saying it's legitimate, but the sub-translation that I saw actually mentioned that Beerus said, "Is this too heavy for you?" So it kind of seemed like the energy was actually putting a weight on Goku. So I definitely thought that was a pretty interesting thing. If you guys have seen any other scenes like this in Dragon Ball that I'm not remembering at the moment, please let me know. But as of my knowledge right now, I've never really seen a scene like that off the top of my head. So the next interesting detail has to deal with Vegeta, and I actually did a video with Rhymestyle on this. You're probably going to see it come up on his channel in the next few days. But Rhymestyle has this theory that Vegeta is a god already at this point in the show. And the reason why he thinks this is that when you look at the fight between Goku and Beerus, Vegeta was looking at Beerus and Goku fighting without really having to be there. He was basically just on the ship seeing the fight, whereas the other really powerful Z fighters like Gohan, Piccolo, everybody like that on the ship, they couldn't see it. Obviously, Piccolo could have flown away and could have seen it, you know, close up. I don't know why he was on the ship. But for the other Z fighters, they were gassed out of energy. But what makes it interesting is how Vegeta could see everything from the ship itself, and this kind of reminds me of what we've seen in Dragon Ball Z, where Tien and Piccolo are essentially watching the entire fight of watching the entire fight of Vegeta against Semi-Perfect Cell during the Cell arc, and they're watching everything that's basically been going on from Kami's lookout. So it's kind of like one of those weird situations, and you say to yourself, is Vegeta like on another level for him to see this fight? Because obviously Goku and, you know, Beerus are on a godly scale now. Or is he just so much stronger or superior to the other fighters that he's able to do this? Interesting question. We made a unique topic, and if once this video comes out, I'm obviously going to post a link to this video if you're seeing this beforehand. So that's a little observation that I made about Vegeta in this episode. Now, as for my last interesting detail, I'm sure you guys probably knew there was no way I could possibly ignore this in an episode, and it was the fact that during this fight between Goku and Beerus, Beerus managed to inflict enough damage on Goku to the point where he had like an entire hole in his body, and Goku fell in the water. And weirdly enough, we've never seen the Super Saiyan God transformation do this. Goku actually healed from this damage and came up out of the water completely fresh, literally as if a person like Dende had healed him. And it was really weird because this is now opening up the floodgates to what a Super Saiyan God can do. We haven't even seen this in Fakatsu no F, and I'm sure there's going to be some people saying, well, if Goku was a Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan, notice I'm not saying pure Super Saiyan God anymore, guys, because I've actually gotten a negative reputation for using that term, because enough people who listen to my videos would go saying that pure Super Saiyan God, and then it makes me look like I don't know what the official title is. So even though I hate the title, I'm going to use Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan from here on out. So anyways, guys, but when Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan Goku was injured in Fakatsu no F by Sorbet, he wasn't healing from that damage. And that's the weirdest thing about it. He needed to use a sensu bean, but you would think that if Fakatsu no F takes place after this, theoretically, obviously, Fakatsu no F and Super are not in the same, terms, and obviously in terms of the storytelling, but if that was the case, you would think that a Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan should have been able to heal it, or maybe it's just for Super Saiyan. All of this unexplored mystery stuff is pretty interesting, but I definitely like that Super put in a new detail that really, really isolates itself from the movie, so now we can look at Super as a completely different series. And I really like that about this episode. And for your thoughts, do you guys think Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan could also heal? Say your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, moving on to my impressions, I have to say that this was by far the most intense episode in terms of how Super has portrayed it, where it looked like Goku literally died. Even though we know Goku is not going to die, I try to watch Super as if I don't know what's going to happen, obviously after the Majin Buu arc had ended 10 years after. I try to look at Super as a completely different series, and with that said, it looked like Goku died. He really tried his absolute best to stop Beerus from destroying the Earth, which was something I found really, really, really powerful in this episode. And looking at the way the Z-Fighters reacted to him, as I mentioned earlier, when he was being injured by Beerus, that was also a really powerful scene to see their emotions. But what I liked about this episode the most in terms of its impressions is that it gave off a very, very intense feeling, something we haven't seen so far. In the previous episode, it seemed like they were having a lighthearted fight. We saw Vegeta fighting against Beerus, and that seemed really intense, but it was so short we really couldn't get the same feeling. However, I will say the series was at its absolute peak in terms of intensity right before Goku returned to tell Beerus to not blow up the Earth, and that was what I would consider the most intense moment because of how the Z Fighters were interacting with, you know, obviously Beerus being about to destroy the Earth. But in terms of intensity, this episode was great. I definitely like the change in the theme and the tone of Dragon Ball Super so far, and I definitely look forward to the next episode of Dragon Ball Super. In terms of the most memorable moment of this episode, it would definitely have to be when Goku is in the water, basically looking like he's dead, and he's just kind of like thinking to himself, like, what am I up against? Kind of reminded me of the scene where when future Trunks blasted 17 and 18, or as Geekdom or Blackenfist would say, Jinzo Negan 17 or 18. When he blasted them in the history of Trunks, and we basically look up and see that Trunks is like, what am I up against? And I felt, it kind of reminded me like this, like I'm up against a superior being, and the way like the music had changed and the way the moment was, it felt so intense, like man, this is like Super Saiyan God Goku literally being almost killed by this Beerus guy, and how he just flies up right from that like absolutely nothing happened. That was the highlight of this episode. That was probably one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen in Dragon Ball history, and I loved every second of it. So guys, that has been my video for today. Overall, I'm gonna give this episode 5 stars. To me, this is the second best episode we've seen so far. I give episode 8 a slight edge, only because of the fact that I feel like it accomplished so many things in the episode, being action-packed, having a lot of comical moments in it, and having a very, very intense moment, and then having that intense moment resolved by Goku coming at the end. So much happened in episode 8 that I give episode 8 just a little bit of an edge over this one. But the action in this was fantastic. The animation looked much better, even though there were obviously some scenes that didn't look as good. And as Dino and I have said before, episode 5 has been the cancer for Dragon Ball fans, because it makes everybody look at Dragon Ball Super with a microscope. Because if you look at Ball, and if you look at Z, and if you look at other animes, there's always bad animation, guys. But as far as this episode is concerned, this episode's fantastic. It has a ton of replay value, and I highly recommend anybody to watch this. This is definitely one of the best episodes in probably in most likely Dragon Ball history, as far as I'm concerned, and I definitely loved every second of it. So I hope you guys like my review. I had to get this out really quickly, so you know I didn't have to, you know, basically be overdue with the video, and I don't want to keep you guys waiting. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and share your thoughts in the comment section below. Where would you guys rank this? And I'm going to do my predictions on Tuesday after I do my big theory video that's coming out tomorrow. So please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.